and colleagues, it is an honor for the Permanent Mission of Tonga to join you for this very important and timely youth event focused on communities discriminated on work and descent, or CDWD. We thank the organizers and particularly commend the leadership of young people who are courageously stepping forward to claim their rightful space in global development dialogue. The very presence of CDWD youth on this platform is a powerful reminder. These communities are not voiceless. They have simply been unheard for far too long, but looking at the strength and momentum they have. Today, that is changing, and I can say this looking at the young generation taking the lead. Somewhere I read that there are about 270 million people affected by this. Tonga reaffirms its support for the principles enshrined in international human rights law, including the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. We particularly note CERT General Recommendation number 29, which explicitly recognizes discrimination based on descent, including caste, and calls on states to take immediate and effective measures to eliminate such deeply rooted structural exclusion. We wish to acknowledge the critical work of the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Descent, or GFOD. GFOD has been instrumental in raising the visibility of youth from descent communities globally and has done extensive work in areas such as youth empowerment, access to justice, gender equity, and international advocacy. I had the opportunity to explore the extensive research, powerful grassroots voices, and compelling visuals shared through your website and social media platforms. Their efforts have been key in building a strong intersectional and rights-based movement that reflects both the historical struggles and the future aspiration. As a signatory to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC, we are committed to advancing child rights and are pleased to support the CDWD movement in addressing the specific challenges faced by children from these communities. Tonga believes in inclusive development that leaves no one behind, not in words, but in practice. We are therefore pleased to express our support for the formation of a group of friends on CDWD at the United Nations, and will also request another permanent nation. We believe such a platform will help advance recognition, solidarity, and coordinated action on issues of descent-based discrimination globally. As we listen to the voices of youth today, many of whom are organizing across borders, challenging stigma and leading community transformation, we are reminded that sustainable development cannot be achieved without dignity, equity, and justice for all. We look forward to continuing our engagement and partnership on this important issue and provide every possible support. Malo Apido, and thank you, Naveen, and team for the great and wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency, for the wonderful words and, of course, the strong support, as you have mentioned, towards the formation of the group of friends on communities discriminated on work and descent. And if you have some more time, Excellency, we'll also try to play a video, maybe, which also kind of showcase and also very specifically talks about what kind of issues, challenges communities discriminated on work and descent have been facing. So can we have the video?
The world is home to over 270 million people of communities discriminated on work and descent. Discrimination based on work and descent, DWD, is the UN terminology for systemic discrimination like slavery systems, including caste-based hierarchical systems in different parts of the world. This type of discrimination is pre- and post-colonialism and is rooted in the idea of purity and pollution. It manifests in practices such as casteism, untouchability, slavery, and anti-gypsyism. Discrimination based on work and descent is a unique form of inequality, where individuals are targeted not based on their appearance, but on their ancestral heritage and profession. Unlike racism, which is about hating people because of their skin color and looks, discrimination based on work and descent happens among people who are alike in some ways. These communities face a range of discriminatory practices, including restrictions on socio-economic, civil, political, and cultural rights. They are also subjected to notions of purity and pollution and are excluded from civic amenities such as education, health services, urban infrastructure, and access to justice. The discrimination faced by these communities often leads to violence, including assault, murder, rape, and false cases, especially when they resist discrimination and assert their rights and entitlements, be it Roma in Europe, Quilombolas in Latin America, Dalits and Burakuman in Asia, or Heritin in Africa. The members of CDWD are often subjected to violence when they demand their rights and entitlements. Women, children, and members of the LGBTQ community of CDWD are most vulnerable. However, these communities are fighting back and demanding their rights, including access to education, fair representation in the government institutions, the end of slavery and discrimination, and inclusion in policy making and legal systems. They also demand access to financial resources, health services, and the right to own land and access to political participation and power. Let us stand in solidarity with these communities and work towards a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, equality and justice, regardless of their work and descent.
Thank you, Pranjali and Carla, for the video and the extensive tech support you have been providing. And of course, before moving to the next part, I would also like to thank our co-organizers along with the Global Forum of Communities Discriminate on Work and Decent. We have major group of children and youth as usual who has always been supportive of this cause extensively. We have Global Indigenous Youth Caucus, which has been constantly collaborating, supporting, and ensuring that our voices as Indigenous youth and CDWD youth are being heard together on these issues, whether it's about segregation, whether it's about untouchability, or whether it's about land issues and other rights issues. Then we have Migration Youth and Children Platform, which has also kind of been constantly supporting and talking about similar issues. And this is that stage we are trying to have both of us together and working on taking this forward. We have the Inclusivity Project and Asia Dalit Rights Forum. We just had Bina, who just left. She was the one who is heading and leading the Asia Dalit Rights Forum. We have GFOD and Ergo Network. We have Gabby from Ergo Network. And of course, thank you to Nagma and John who are present over there for supporting us through International Association of Youth and Students for Peace. And finally, CONAC is one organization which works on rights of Quilombola in Brazil extensively. So thank you very much. And of course, sir, if you have time to stay more and listen to the discussion, that's perfect. Otherwise, I'm going to thank you, so I'm sorry. Yeah, so I mean, I think let's dive deeper into the issues now. Now that Excellency has also kind of shown strong support, I would start from the aspect of Africa, because we have been discussing about these things that caste-based discrimination only exists in India. It is only visible in South Asia, and we don't want to go beyond that. Whenever there is discussion on whether it's a national fight or it's a regional fight or it's a global fight, we always end up and concluding that no, it's actually a national issue, it's a regional issue. But similar forms of discrimination are very much evident in Africa. And these are the grassroots stories which I think we need to kind of go through, listen to. And along with the grassroots story, we also need to listen to the success stories which we have in our hand. So we have with us Miss Alima Tal. Alima Tal is a senior rights expert with Global Forum of Communities Discriminate on Work and Dissent. And she's also the youth Africa Youth Regional Coordinator, and has been instrumental and extensive work which she has done in ensuring that we have a strong Africa resolution on communities discriminated on work and descent, which the Africa Commission has passed recently. So I'll just hand it over to Alima. Alima.
Thank you, Navin. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, I greet you all. I am Ali Matal from the Gambia, West Africa. So today I will speak as an African youth, part of the generation that refused to be silenced. And we are here with one clear call, hear us now. Across African continent, indigenous communities discriminated on work and descent, known as the CDWD youths, continue to live at a sharp edge of inequality. Our lives are shaped by a system of exclusion, rooted in identity, descent, traditional occupation, and geography. Many of us are now born into discrimination, grow up surrounded by structural barriers, and come of age in society that too often treat our existence as invisible. In both rural villages and urban settlements, young people from our communities struggle daily to access education. In my community, or in some of the communities in the Gambia, in the rural parts of the Gambia, we have seen a case whereby there are two separate schools, meaning one's the school for the so-called nobles and one for the so-called slaves. And in terms of burial ground as well, and also in segregations in public spaces, in hospital as well. So descent-based communities face inadequate housing and basic healthcare facilities. We are pushed into informal sectors or forced to migrate for survival. Yet, despite these challenges, we are not victims. We are survivors, and we are leaders. Across Africa, Indigenous and CDWD, meaning the communities discriminated based on work and descent, youths are building some of the most promising community-driven solutions. We see young people organizing agricultural cooperatives in dry lands, reviving traditional crafts and local economics, defending the environment, and leading mutual aid effort during times of crisis. These are not isolated stories. They represent a quiet revolution of resilience and innovation that remains largely invisible in national reports and development platforms. Why? Because too many of our communities are still missing from national data. We are not counted in census. We are not disaggregated in surveys. We are not consulted in development plans. Without data, we are rendered invisible. And when we are invisible, we are excluded from policies, budgets, and solutions. At the same time, youth from communities discriminated based on work and descent are leading change. But without support, we rely on volunteerism, personal sacrifice, and determination. Imagine what we could achieve when even a fraction of resources allocated everywhere, we urgently need direct investment in our ideas, in our initiatives, and in our leadership. And we need more than representation. We need meaningful inclusion. That means involving youth from marginalized communities in decision-making at all levels. Our voices must not only be heard, they must be shape the agenda. So we say again, hear us now, partner with us, and together, let's build a future where every young person, regardless of their descent, identity, or history, has the power to thrive. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alima. I just forgot to ask you the question, but you already responded. So I'm sorry for that. But yeah, that's how the pattern is for the moderation. But thank you, because the way the whole aspect of segregation comes in, even when we talk about, I mean, not only in schools, but also in other aspects in workplaces, while we are like in public spaces, the strong aspect of segregation may not be visible, but still the thought process is so strong that it's visible through the actions of a person who's trying to, even if he or she is trying to hide it. And that one example, which very strongly, which Alima has also mentioned, is in school. There is a strong segregation where we have a set of kids which are part of this group. Then there is another kid which is part of the noble group, and that's how they're supposed to get education. And sometimes we also say that no, these kind of things don't exist on paper. They might be existing in stories, but still, not only in schools, even in terms of fetching water, having access to public spaces, it's very difficult for these communities at this stage when we are talking about AI and digital inclusion and science and technology. So thank you, Alima, for this thing. Next, we have Judy Kipikenda, who is an award-winning Indigenous leader and also the founding executive director of Koepitek Ogic Women and Youth Network. She's also the global focal point of Global Indigenous Youth in Caucus at MGCY. So we don't have her because she just had some emergency. So she was not able to come to New York. So we'll have her video with us. Can we have the video?
Honored guests, distinguished colleagues, and especially our vibrant youth from around the globe. Greetings. My name is Judy Kipkenda. I'm an advisor at the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. Today, we confront a profound injustice, the systemic discrimination faced by communities in their pursuit of work and dignified livelihoods. This issue casts a particular long shadow over Indigenous youth, whose inherent potential is too often stifled by historical burdens and ongoing prejudice. From the village I come from in Eldama Ravine, found in Kenya, to every other corner of the globe, Indigenous youth encounter unique barriers. They're often disconnected from mainstream economic opportunities. We face stereotypes that question our capabilities and struggles against the erosion of our traditional knowledge, culture, and spirituality that holds immense value to us. This is not merely about unemployment. It is about the denial of decent work that is safe, fairly compensated, and respects our cultural identities. Ladies and gentlemen, we must recognize that the roots of this discrimination are deep, often stemming from colonial legacies that disrupted indigenous economies and social structures. To truly achieve decent work for all of us, we must actively dismantle these systemic barriers. This means investing in culturally relevant education, creating inclusive workspaces, and empowering youths, and especially indigenous youths, to shape their own economic features. I mean, nothing for us without us. Also leveraging both traditional indigenous wisdom and modern skills. Our success is not just ours, it enriches us all. Let us all commit to a future where every young indigenous person can thrive. I wish you all fruitful discussion. I'll be following online. Thank you very much. And I also quite regret that I could not join in person, but thank you for giving me this opportunity to just share my perspective on behalf of global indigenous youth. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Judy, for the video. And yeah, I mean, it's if you look at the whole aspect of work and dissent, this is something which is an umbrella impact, which is having an umbrella impact, kind of impacting a number of communities, even in terms of when we talk about caste, even in terms of when we talk about indigenous communities as well. And of course, while we listen to Gabriela in upcoming minutes, we'll also try to understand how Roma Roma community has been impacted due to that. But we'll just try to give opportunities before you, Gabriela, to the youth group. So we'll just try to ensure that we have voices, and then you can respond to that as well very strongly. It's not like we are excluding you. It's just like we want your experience on that as well. So I'll just hand it over to Samay. Dr. Samay Kamal is organizing partner of the major group of children and youth at the United Nations, the official UN intergenerational platform that drives youth participation across SDGs. He is also a doctor, and he also founded Arab Youth Platform for Sustainable Development at the League of Arab States. Samay, I have a question for you. The major group of children and youth has been instrumental in amplifying youth voices at the UN, including CDWD, which has been phenomenal. Could you share some key actions which MGCY has taken in the past, as well as planning to take it in the future, to support the struggle of CDWD youth as well as indigenous youth? And have you ever come across any such kind of stigmas? And how do you kind of envisions MGCY's role in strengthening this movement, Samay?
Thank you very much, Naveen, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues. It's an honor for me to speak today, not just on behalf of the major group of children and youth, but as an individual, on a topic that is very important to me, a topic that remains underaddressed, underfunded, and often invisible. CDWD and indigenous youth face deep-rooted systems of exclusion. We must confront them head-on with action, not just awareness. So, to answer your question, Naveen, what has MGCY done to support CDWD and indigenous youth? MGCY operates as a self-organized democratic space that brings young people into the UN policy processes. That means including CDWD and indigenous youth at every level: agenda setting, negotiation, monitoring, follow-up and review, etc. Three main actions MGCY undertakes to ensure the participation of everyone. Political space and access. MGCY secures seats for indigenous and marginalized youth in global platforms like ECOSOC Youth Forum, High Level Political Forum, Summit of the Future, and everywhere where we're active at the United Nations. Number two, policy advocacy. We work to include references to systematic discrimination at the UN outcome documents. For example, in the VNR consultations, we supported youth-led organizations to submit shadow reports and also comments to challenge state narratives on equality. Third, capacity building. MGCY runs regular training sessions for youth from affected communities on UN processes, human rights mechanisms, and evidence-based advocacy. We partner always with grassroots movements all around the world to help local knowledge reach global platforms. Why does this matter? Because voices without structure fades, and access without agency reinforces tokenism. Naveen, you asked me, have I come across these stigmas myself? The answer is yes. Not only that I come from a CDWD background myself as a minority of a minority in my country, but I've worked in health and humanitarian policy in the Middle East and all across Africa. I've seen the caste-based exclusion and refugee access to services, especially health services as a doctor. I've met indigenous youth in global forums whose land rights are ignored while their traditions are used for cultural showcases. I've seen how the denial of identity leads to intergenerational trauma, how exclusion from data leads to exclusion from solutions. So this isn't abstract, this is personal. And if you've ever walked into a room and felt that you don't belong because of where you're from, your name, or your history, or your color, you'd understand it too. Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you, Samay. I think this was indeed very powerful, not only in terms of you mentioning that MGCY is always eager and supportive in terms of supporting the movement and the rights of CDWD and indigenous group, but also your own experience, which comes from the same perspective, facing historical and marginalization. Thank you, Samay, for also giving us time. So we were supposed to have Krishna from United Nations Youth Office. He's constantly facing some power cuts. So he was supposed to join us virtually, but he has fortunately been able to send us the video. And so can we have the video, please?
Your Excellencies, esteemed delegates, and my dear fellow changemakers, good afternoon. I'm currently speaking to you from Mauritius to talk about how the caste system and some neo-colonial subsystems still persist today and how those affect the youth from having proper access to decent work. Across continents, across several countries throughout the world, there are many instances where youths from a certain specific background or certain specific ethnicities are discriminated against because of the historical pasts that affected the social and economic fabric of those countries. A simple example from my country, Mauritius, is the ghetto community or the cité, as it is often known in Mauritius, Bans Enfants Cité. Those are children who are still being discriminalized, stigmatized because of who they are and because of their origins. So the ghetto system in Mauritius has a historical colonial past. Just after 1835, during the abolition of slavery in Mauritius, the colonizers forced the freed people to go near the port or to go to places near sugarcane estates, but far away from the bourgeoisie settlements of the colonizers back then. So they were forced into temporary settlements where many people were forced to live in constricted locations. Even after the abolition of slavery, they were severely segregated and discriminalized against. But after independence in 1968, the governments had a chance to remediate to this problem, but unfortunately many other systemic issues were created because of cités that were constructed, which still pushed forward the marginalization of those communities. This propelled the stigmatization and prevented their proper integration in society. So till date, some youngsters from the cité or the ghetto are still perceived as people who are not worthy enough of proper education, people who are not worthy enough to have a proper job in the workplace. And this is a very great problem, not just in Mauritius. In India, we have the caste system, which is still prevalent in the workplaces. We have the untouchable castes who, because of their origins, are prevented to have proper access towards education, but also proper access towards work. And those youngsters have very difficult lives. We also have the similar instances, for example, in Japan, the Burakumin or the Al-Akhdams in Yemen, and even the Dalits castes from Nepal. So in various places, even in Brazil, even in the US, we have those people who have very complex historical backgrounds which led to their actual problems. Some can be neo-colonial issues, residuals from colonization, some residuals from a longer history, but it is a history which is still existing today and still affecting some youngsters today. So we must understand that those problems are rooted in the same things everywhere around the world, namely racism, classism, and inherited ideologies of supremacy. So it is essential not just to implement different systems, but it is also essential to start a decolonization of our inner landscapes, to start to own our own narratives and not let the past supremacist powers to make a narrative for us. And it is essential to start thinking of owning our own identities, of our language, of our ways of thinking, of our philosophy, of our relationship with our spirituality, with nature, to own the things that was there way before those wrong segregations happen. And then this personal change must be mirrored into systemic action. For example, the United Nations can tend to reinforce the integrations of truth commissions, addressing the problem at a systemic level, not just nationally, but internationally. For example, like the South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Mauritius Truth and Justice Commission, but we also have the CARICOM 10 points plan for reparatory justice for the Caribbeans, who go further than just to make space for healing, but also to recommend reparatory actions which can be acted upon to bring more justice, to bring more equity. So at the end of the day, what is essential is to understand that regardless of our borders, regardless of our skin colors, regardless of our ideologies, of our origins, we are all human beings. Like in the Sanskrit term and philosophy, we say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, meaning that the world is one family. We are one family of Homo sapiens, of human beings, and we are all the same, regardless of how we think, of which languages we speak, of how we communicate. So it is essential to know that we have to work together and we have to give one another a chance to live so that the world in itself can elevate and that the global society can become more enlightened. So thank you, merci for your attention. Unfortunately, I couldn't be here today, but I will be here next week. And if ever you have any question, we can definitely connect, especially with regards to the work that we are doing with respect to the decolonization of our inner landscapes. So it starts with our imaginary, how we imagine things, our language, how we speak, our spiritual connection. So everything that has to do in the inner landscapes. And we're also working with regards to democratizing this form of knowledge and democratizing the narratives of the often underrepresented communities. So thank you for your attention, and I wish you beautiful connections and especially beautiful initiations of different projects all around the world.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, and also thanks to the extensive support with United Nations Youth Office has also provided to the whole CDWD rights movement. So before we move to the next panelist, may I also request to turn off the notification which we are getting from the, I think it's either a mail or some WhatsApp notification that is disturbing the videos. Maybe if we can turn it off. Thank you. Do we have any questions? We'll just have a quick round of questions, maybe just 2 questions from the floor before we move forward to this. We have the panelists who have spoken, so we can have questions from them. Yeah. You can also tell like whom do you want to ask the question also. I'm sorry, the people on the video won't be able to respond. Who have given the video, others can happily respond. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so my question is a bit more, I mean, I think anyone can take this. So I am working on leveraging AI for economic development in Africa. And I'm also really looking at digital inclusion and digital equity. So I don't know, based off on like your experiences or, the work you've done so far, like how can we ensure that digital inclusion efforts don't just like, specifically include CWD and Indigenous youth, but as users and maybe trainees, because most AI companies, they just get data from indigents to, develop their models or to train their models. But how can we ensure that these tools are actually recognizing or integrating like their cultural differences, systemic knowledge, or informal skills, lived experiences? How can we like integrate all of that into when we talk about digital equity and inclusion?
Okay, thank you. One more question. If there is any, otherwise we'll just move to the response and we move to the other panelists. All right, we don't see any hand. Who would like to respond to that? Maybe Alima? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your question. So in regards to these communities, the CDWD youths, in my presentation, I have mentioned them being excluded in education, and also being not being captured in census in disaggregated data. In Africa, recently the African Commission on Human and People's Rights passed a resolution committing to a continental study on these communities. So there is no data on these communities. So for these communities to have access to AI, science and technology, they first need to get the opportunity to be educated, access to skills and employment. But this won't happen if they are discriminated in schools in early stages. A young person or a young child from these communities cannot be in school because they are subjected to bullying. They are subjected to harmful traditional practices such as FGM, early marriage as well. So for them to have access to science and technology, AI, I think governments, African governments, needs to step in with this through the advocacy that we are doing, pushing on African government, doing our advocacy on the National Human Rights Commission, African Commission, and then UN platform as well. I think it will help African government to look into recommendations and then resolutions as well. And then it will help in the promotion of the rights of these communities, including education. You know, when we say education, it includes everything, including AI, science and technology. So thank you.
Not now, maybe. Sorry, I'm very sorry. Yeah, so let's move to the next panelist. We have Gabriela with us, and Gabriela is a prominent Roma rights advocate and the executive director of European Roma Grassroots Organization Network, which is also known as OGO. And she has extensive experience working at both grassroots as well as policy level, and has been a leading voice in advancing the rights, inclusion, and empowerment of Roma communities, which are discriminated on work and decent. Gabriela, I have a quick question to you. Having witnessed the evolution of the Roma movement over the decades, what lessons do you believe are most important to pass on to a younger generation of activists? Not only Roma, if you can kind of give that message to other communities as well. So what have been the learnings, what have been the challenges altogether, and how can we ensure intergenerational equity and solidarity in continuing the rights, fight for the rights of Roma and other communities discriminated on work and descent? Gabby.
Thank you very much, Naveen. Dear young leaders and respected colleagues, I don't see so many elders here, but it's really my honor to be here today and on this important side event during the high-level forum. I think that having CDWD explicitly on the agenda at the high-level political forum, it's timely, and having young leaders bringing the voice in this mainstream policy spaces, it's ensuring that our communication, our communities are being heard, and that we also can lead the conversations. And I think that's the vital step towards the justice and equity. I feel here special today, but I still hope that next time we can have a bit younger Roma coming here instead of me. Before coming to the question, I will still briefly introduce the Ergo Network. We are the organization which is based in the European space. We bring together a national and local Roma-led organization from across the Europe. And our mission is to fight anti-Gypsyism and to advance social inclusion and equality for Roma communities by influencing the policy, building capacities and strengthening grassroots voices. And it's important important to say that we work closely with youth activists, women's group, and also community leaders, because that's how we see that this is the only way how we can ensure that the Roma realities are reflected in the national and European decision making. And through the work with the Global Forum, we are also kind of bringing it higher up to the UN level. But always, our practice is rooted in participation, dignity, and justice. Maybe I would just say that I started also to work very young, and for years I was running a Roma student center in Prague, Czech Republic, called Roma Verzitas. And since my start of this engagement, it's actually been decades now. I got some important lessons, and I would like to share them here with you. I didn't work on those lessons alone. Actually, I work with them with my colleague Stelina Dungay. She's currently a volunteer in our organization in Brussels office. I think the very important is to stay rooted in community, because the strength is coming from the people, and we are coming from the grassroots activism, and the movement can also be kind of have to have a solid ground, and young activists must remain close to the community needs, voices, and hopes, but also should not be binded by that. So if you believe that you can make a step out, and everybody should find its place. So someone will be stronger on the local level and someone might be stronger on the UN level, but we somehow have to stay connected. We need to know our history, because understanding the history of oppression that we are going through, in our case, it's anti-Gypsyism. I think this is the struggle this struggle for the rights and the past movement strategies is the key. That we will not repeat our mistakes, and that we might carry forward the successes. For us Roma, it's also to know the language. We have a special language called Romani language. And very often it's also forgotten. So for us, I think it's important to really know the history, and especially because we don't learn about it in the mainstream curricula in the schools, and it's up to us to keep the history living. We should not be uncompromising on our dignity and values, and we have to be oriented in strategic actions. So we always must speak truth, and to be oriented to the power. And I think this is important. In my case, I'm always, and I think this is the sort of a new leadership skill also. I think that many of you, younger generation, you're already having it. It's to build the alliances, build coalitions, working together across different issues, and also among ourselves. So this kind of traditional leadership, it's not having anymore the place, but really kind of working across. And I see here at the United Nation, we can see it. This is what the other thing, it's really to practice the self-care and collective care. We should not forget about ourselves, because the struggle and the fight, it's very exhausting and also very isolating. First, we have to learn to find where we are actually building our own strengths. So for me, when I was started, it was every other student who received scholarship. It was every other project that actually has certain impact on community. So I was building it up through the small things. But on the beginning, I was just also tirelessly working days and nights. And now I also know that the well-being, my own needs and well-being, it's also important. So please keep this in mind as well. And and just on ensuring the intergenerational equity and solidarity. So we have to create the spaces. So it's on us, on the old elders, to create the spaces for dialogue and membership. Youth must be included, not just symbolically. We also have to kind of allow the decisions, to kind of open the decision makers spaces, and have the learning exchange and leadership experiences by having those spaces. We should avoid idolizing the past, but kind of, bring those kind of methods, and that's actually are based on respect, listening, and share ownership. Capacity building, of course, many young activists lack the access to the resources, network, and platforms, and we might establish them in the past, but they might be, some of them might be still relevant. But also for us, the elders, we should be open to the new, new tools and new paths, because I think especially now with the AI and the digitalization, I think that's very important. And finally, I think really we must stay united, and that the fight we do for the Roma rights, it's deeply connected with the rights of other communities discriminated based on work and descent, and the solidarity must be intergenerational and also intersectional. And I think that's what we see here. And I would just add that this global work has utmost importance, because we might be alone as a single group of this community, but together we are much stronger, and that we can call for the action together. So I think that we have to ask for more recognition. Some might have it already in the different parts of the globe, but not as a big group together. So as we move forward, may our efforts today lay stronger foundation for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. This was powerful, Gabriela. And of course, if you can also tell us what does Opa Roma means, which we keep using in terms of...
Opa Roma, it's been like up Roma, stand up Roma. It's actually not a very correct translation, but we are not the correct calling, but we use it really for kind of engagement, like kind of encouragement. Opre Roma, let's stand up, let's go. Yes.
Thank you, Gabriela. So yeah, a very strong point on solidarity and global partnership, which Gabriela has also made. And I've also given all the panelists a paper. That's a document which also talks about how we all can support the whole movement around the rights of CDWD. And maybe if you can also have a look at the document and see what other things we can kind of see, make changes to that. But if you look at the top of the document, you can see a number of organizations. It's not only Global Forum, GFOD, but other number of organizations, along with major group of children and youth. We have Youth SPI platform. And then we have MYCP, which is Migration, Youth and Children platform. We have Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. We have ERGO. We have International Association for Youth and Student Association, which have been kind of strongly supporting the cause. So maybe before we move to the last panelist, I would also request to play the video if you have of a young CDWD activist to have the stories from the grassroots.
नमस्कार मेरो नाम कुञ्जनी परिया ब्यासी हो म नेपालबाट बोल्दैछु म दलित समुदायलाई प्रतिनिधित्व गर्छु
My name is Ephraim Ogu and I represent the Osu community in Nigeria.
Hello everyone, I'm Maria.
I am Alima, speaking from the Gambia, and I am representing the youth in the community discrimination on work and descent.
मेरो बुझाइमा यस्तो समुदाय हो जसले जात, पेशा र उत्पत्तिका आधारमा निरन्तर रूपमा विभेद भोगिरहेको छ।
Souvent invisible, mais elle touche profondément les personnes qui en sont victimes.
Youths in these communities face challenges such as social exclusion, education barrier, inaccessibility issues, and limited employment opportunities.
त्यसमा पहिलो भनेको सहभागिता, सामाजिक, राजनीतिक र आर्थिक बहिष्करण.
Most of the Osu youths and families are not allowed to own lands in their own communities, and those who manage to own lands are being deprived of their lands. Their lands are being taken away from them.
Pour lutter contre cette injustice, il est essentiel de sensibiliser le grand public, de soutenir les initiatives locales et de plaider pour des réformes législatives.
We should also build partnerships with NGOs, government agencies, CSOs, and other groups that are fighting for the human rights of these communities.
अबको 5 वर्षमा CDWD समुदायका लागि विश्वव्यापी रूपमा नै एउटा गाइडलाइन बनेको म देख्न चाहन्छु.
I hope that these communities will be in much better position of power, having more influence in decision-making processes.
Avec des actions concrètes, les jeunes de cette communauté discriminée sur la base du travail ou de l'ascendance pourraient voir une amélioration de leurs conditions de vie d'ici 5 ans, grâce à un meilleur accès à l'éducation et à une plus grande inclusion sociale.
Thank you. So thank you for the video, Pranjali and Carla. So a lot of discussion around CDWD, no doubt, now we already have. So let's move back to the aspects and rights of Indigenous youth. And I would request we have Nagma with us. Nagma is the representative of IAYSP, which is International Association for Youth and Students for Peace. To the United Nations, and a passionate advocate in youth and peace building initiatives. She's also a former Miss Nepal, and she has proudly represented Nepal on global stages, competing in prestigious beauty pageants such as Miss Earth 2012, World Miss Universe 2016, Miss Eco International 2016, and making history as Nepal's first ever representative at Miss Universe in 2017. Of course, we can have a round of applause for her now also. Before I move to the question, and Nagma, as an Indigenous youth leader from Nepal and a representative of IAYSP, we also call it YSP. You might be hearing the term YSP whenever you're talking about, during these time. How do you see the role of education, leadership development, and global platforms in empowering Indigenous and marginalized youth, especially in the face of systemic barriers and, of course, gender-based violence? Nagma.
Thank you for the floor, Naveen. Good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues, change makers, trailblazers, youth advocates, and everyone present here. My name is Nagma Shrestha, and I speak today as a proud Indigenous woman from the Newar community in Nepal, and as a representative of the International Association of Youth and Students for Peace, or IAYSP. Or you can call it YSP as well, as Naveen said. Nepal is home to 125 caste and ethnic groups, including around 60 indigenous nationalities. While the country has adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and ratified ILO Convention 169, many indigenous peoples continue to face deep-rooted challenges, particularly in securing land rights, preserving language and culture, and gaining meaningful representation in decision-making spaces. Even within relatively visible indigenous groups like the Newar community from where I belong, we face the erosion of our language, displacement from ancestral neighborhoods, and the loss of cultural sites to unchecked urbanization. These are struggles we live quietly, but they run deep. And they remind us that visibility does not always equal justice. Last December, through IAYSP, we partnered with a local nonprofit called Girls Empowered by Travel, Get Nepal, to host a peace and leadership seminar in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. The program was open to youth from all backgrounds, and the participants who joined us, girls from Sankhwa Sabha, the eastern side of Nepal, they all were from indigenous communities. It was a powerful reminder of how cross-cultural exchange fosters connection. We shared stories, learned from one another, and reflected on how peace begins within, but grows stronger through community. This kind of initiative responds to a real and growing need. Indigenous youth in Nepal, particularly girls, face significant structural and social barriers, including limited access to education, underrepresentation in leadership, and vulnerability to discrimination and gender-based violence, GBV. According to the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, Indigenous youth globally are often excluded from empowerment initiatives despite being central to the sustainability of their communities. In Nepal, where indigenous people make up to 35% of the population, the National Human Rights Commission has pointed out how geographic isolation and systemic marginalization lead to fewer educational and economic opportunities, especially for girls. Our seminar aimed to offer a space, however small, where these young women could grow in confidence, explore leadership, and begin building solutions from their own experiences. But let's also be honest. It's incredibly difficult for someone from an indigenous or descent-based marginalized background to even reach a platform like this. Whether due to limited access, lack of networks, or general exclusion, the
Okay.
it did go beyond 2 minutes. Okay. And as I was saying, and for many of us, especially women, that path is further burdened by the reality of sexual harassment, whether in educational spaces, workplaces, or informal industries. These experiences are often normalized or silenced, but they shape how safe we feel, how far we're allowed to go, and whether we are taken seriously as leaders. Just yesterday, we organized a side event in this very room on the topic sexual harassment as a barrier to achieving the SDGs. We heard powerful testimonies of how descent, gender, and economic inequality often intersect, especially for indigenous and marginalized youth and women. These are not abstract issues. They are lived, repeated, and internalized realities for too many young people. As someone from an indigenous background who works closely with youth, my message is simple. Know your rights, use your voice, and don't be afraid to claim space in your community, in policy making, and in global forums like this one. Indigenous youth are not invisible. We are here and our stories matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nawa. That was very powerful indeed. And thanks for bringing the aspects which have pushed indigenous youth as well beyond that line where they have been facing excessive systemic barriers in terms of ensuring even whether we talk about livelihood, whether we talk about education, or instead when you also shared your experience of the whole pigeon word, which we keep talking about. So next we move to the last panelist, but the idea of having her in the last as a last panelist was because the whole aspect of how migration impacts the CDWD and DWD and indigeneity and of course other youth which have been kind of facing similar forms of discrimination. Multilingual junior researcher and aspiring migration policy experts, we have Risa Francisca, who brings experience from the Philippines and Poland and France to offer a cross-regional, intersectional, and holistic perspective on the analysis of contemporary migration issues. Currently, she's postgraduate student in migration studies at the University of Paris. Previously, she served as research editorial assistant at the Scalabrini Migration Center and the Asian and Pacific Migration Journal. Francisca, I just have a quick question to you. In your experience working on migration, how do you see migration intersecting with discrimination based on work and descent? And if you want to also kind of move forward to indigeneity, and what unique challenges do migrant youth from CDWD background face, and how can global framework better respond to their realities?
So thank you, Naveen. I have the wonderful task of closing today's amazing session and following up with all these amazing speakers. But co-organizers, excellencies, fellow panelists, and dearest colleagues, my name is Francesca. I'm originally from the Philippines. It's a country with 110 ethno-linguistic groups recognized as indigenous people, and also a country with a so-called culture of migration. I myself identify as a migrant. Now, allow me to respond to your question with another question that I observe gets raised a lot in both academia and policymaking spaces. And that is, should non-migrants have a say in discussions that directly concern migration? And if so, to what extent? We all know that identities are important and our reflexivities are informed by our lived experiences, which is, for me, one of the most underrated forms of expertise. But I think the answer to the question is clear. Yes, non-migrants should be included, because how do we break through these echo chambers if not? Migration is not an issue that exists in a vacuum. Migration connects to development in both host countries and countries of origin. Migration is linked to questions on housing, ownership, and reparations. And migration also connects to the SDGs, more specifically through the Global Compact for Migration and its 23 objectives directly referencing each SDG and more broadly the 2030 Agenda. But now the follow-up question is, whom should we include in these discussions? I think there needs to be more open dialogue between non-migrants, migration experts, and migrants themselves, as well as those with people from a diaspora background, people of African descent, indigenous people, Roma and traveler communities, and communities discriminated on work and descent. Although our issues are not the same, we cannot understand mobility, movement, migration, displacement without acknowledging those who fought, resisted, remained resilient before us in this day and age when we confront the very same systemic forces operating within a colonial, racist, elitist, and patriarchal system. We must remember an intersectional approach is one that is a whole of society approach. So when we talk about migrant youth from CDWD backgrounds, we see how these intersections are even more pronounced. While migration can be a very liberating and hopeful experience for some will also continue to undergo discrimination based on work and descent that follows them and haunts them across borders. We see this in the case of the Rohingya, for instance, across the Asia Pacific, and we also see practices of social stratification among migrant communities themselves, replicating the very practices of material and symbolic violence within their respective countries of origin in new host societies. This is exactly why the work of MYCP is so crucial and that we are very honored to be here today. Recently, we prepared a global youth report based on consultations with 800 youth and 65 organizations, and highlighted within these documents is what we are discussing here today, something that is relevant to CDWD and Indigenous youth, that these voices are essential in shaping policies that directly define their futures, yet they are still systematically excluded from the very decision-making processes that impact their communities. As one of my favorite feminist scholars, Doreen Massey, reminds us about mobility, some people are in charge of it, others initiate flows and movement, others don't. More are on the receiving end of it, and others are effectively imprisoned by it. This reality is particularly striking when we live in a time of climate crisis and global conflicts. I think her message is clear. We have differentiated responsibilities in global responses informed by our backgrounds. The findings of MYCP's global consultations reinforce this understanding and bridge communities to demonstrate interconnectedness and provide us with concrete pathways forward. I just wanted to conclude by stating that today in this HLPF, we begin working closer and closer to different processes like the International Migration Review Forum in 2026. We need to be united in solidarity. CDWD issues, Indigenous rights, forced labor migration issues are all interlinked. And our global frameworks must evolve to reflect these intersections and also embed the experiences of and expertise of youth from migrant diaspora, indigenous, and CWD backgrounds. Throughout this HLPF, we've always been saying that this is a milestone HLPF. It's a milestone that they finally formally recognize the stakeholder group on people of African descent. It's a milestone that we are here in this very room today with a specific side event on CDWD issues, so we can see the momentum. But I encourage all of us here today that we can't get complacent. We must sustain and amplify this momentum as we move forward together. Thank you very much.
Definitely, this was very powerful, Francisca. And of course, it's a milestone in terms of not only recognition of Afro-descendants, but also in terms of recognition of CDWD and of course the whole indigenous movement, which has been continuing since ages. And the way we look at it is how do we kind of ensure that there is a strong solidarity within the most marginalized groups, be it historically marginalized groups or be it those groups which have been facing similar forms of discrimination, which may not be very old, but because of war crimes, because of other issues, and because of whatever you very specifically when you refer about migrants and when refugees issues. So thank you, and thank you for the support which MYCP has been providing, Francisca, and thanks to Florencio, who's not over here, a good friend of mine, and Milena, who have kind of ensured that we have a strong solidarity support. So I think let's give opportunity to the questions, people who are online, because we just asked somebody who's at the floor. If we can have questions, 2 questions from the participants, online participants, Bea.
All right, we have one question for our panelist, Lima. So the question is, I would like to know what inspires you to continue fighting as someone who has just learned about discrimination. How can this guest be an ally and advocate for the end of this kind of discrimination? What are some sources that can help them learn more about this?
Okay, I would like to say thank you for that question. When it comes to this form of discrimination in our communities, ever since I was young, this form of discrimination is kind of a normal thing to our society. Like, these people are discriminated, and then it's normal to others. Like, their human rights are violated, but it's also normal to others. So I came across an advert of a rights expert through the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated Based on Work and Descent. Before that, I was an advocate for women and girls in my country. In the case of female genital mutilations, FGM, we all know FGM is highly practiced in Africa, in the Gambia especially. So I was an activist for women and girls. And then I came across, being an activist, you become you generalize every injustice when it comes to fighting. So I came across the opportunity to fight for these communities, and in my tribe in Wolof, we call them some are called slaves. I call them jam, and then we cannot marry in like these communities, or this particular group cannot intermarry with the so-called nobles. So I was wondering when will this end? And then since I become a senior rights expert, I went through trainings on human rights, the regional, national, and then global mechanism. So I love the human rights work. We had engagement with the National Human Rights Commission, with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, with the Human Rights Council in Geneva. And also here, I am in the UN General Assembly. It's my first time at the High Level Political Forum. So it's my passion for human rights and then social justice that brought me to this journey. And then his questions also mention how can he join such advocacy? So it's really simple. It starts at the national level, the community level. You just need to find out the injustice that are going through in your next door in the community, and then brought it up to the national state actors, either the National Human Rights Commission, and then the regional level as well, either the African Commission, and then it will scale to international or global level. So thank you.
Thank you, Alima. One more question online. Do we have?
Okay, we have one more virtual question from ARC Africa. This is for any of our panelists. What innovative strategies can we implement today to ensure that the voices of children with disabilities and Indigenous youth are not only heard, but also prioritized in the decision-making process?
Thank you for the question. I might not have the exact answer, but I know where it can start. For me as well, my personal journey began at the age of, especially the professional journey, began at the age of 16. I started as a TV presenter and then went on to competing in national pageants like the Miss Nepal. And at times I did feel scared and I did feel like I would be discriminated based on my caste, but it didn't stop me. So I think platforms like these, and in addition to that, also the one that I shared, the Peace Designer Seminar, it was a workshop that we held in Kathmandu last December. So the girls who participated were students from grade 11 and 12. They came all the way from Sankwa Sabha, which was in eastern part of Nepal, 18 hours bus drive to Kathmandu. But I could see the passion in them and they so wanted to learn and explore new things and just grow in general. So I think that would be the start for children and youth. And then moving forward, once you're more confident, I'm sure you'll reach to that decision-making position as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I know it was not exactly the question for Roma in Europe, but we have this very nice example of gathering youngsters, like a youth initiative for a remembrance of the Romani Holocaust, because the Holocaust of Roma people, it's almost kind of forgotten Holocaust in Europe. So it's just recently it's being opened up, and there is an initiative of Ternipe, which is the Roma Youth Network. They also organize a youth event with the Global Forum very recently. They brought up for many years, they're bringing together young people to Auschwitz-Birkenau, to Poland, for educational seminars and for visiting and organizing workshops, visiting Auschwitz, but also organizing workshops where you learn about the history, but also where you kind of take actions and bring it back. So there is a country delegation always, which is composed of young people. There were events with, we had 1,000 youngsters coming to Krakow for this workshop. So it's being kind of roll on. There is different people every year, and I think that it's where the young generation, it's taking the responsibility also for making sure that the past is not forgotten. I think that's also one of this very strong initiative, because that's how we kind of can get engaged.
A super quick one, because it actually relates to something that we've been doing in our collaboration. So at MYCP, every year we facilitate the participation of young people in the Global Forum on Migration and Development, which is one of the largest state-led diplomatic processes related to migration and the development nexus. And when we do this election, we ask the young people to say if they identify as a migrant, as a refugee, as someone with diaspora, of course, if they're comfortable. And actually, you brought up to us that we should also include CDWD and people of African descent very recently. And so we've tried to make the eligibility and the desirability criteria reflect this reality more and take that into account so that we can have a better and more holistic youth delegation and a stronger voice, and to bring that up to the global policy level.
Thank you. Thank you, Francisca. Yeah, we can clap. It's okay. We have time for 10 seconds. Don't need. So, no, I mean, thanks to, I mean, I still remember the conversation with Florencio where we were kind of trying to fill up a form and he had kind of circulated it. It was regarding some global conference, I think, which is happening soon. And I told him that, boss, this CDWD term is not included. Are you trying to exclude us through forms as well? Like within 10 minutes, I saw a new form which had the term which says CDWD. And then he also mentioned that sometimes you also need to have some patience, Naveen. So, but then the amount of support and collaborations which have came up, and of course, thanks to the body which is also known as UN MGCY, which has kind of ensured that, you know, not only we collaborate, but we also kind of support in issues which CDWD youth have been extensively facing. So a big round of applause for that as well. Before we move to the next question. Yeah, we can clap again. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, we don't need. So if you don't have any other online, can we move to the floor? Yeah. Okay, we have 5 hands. Yeah, please. And please tell your name and the organization, or maybe if the place you belong to. You have specific
So, hi, I'm John Low. I'm from the International Federation of Medical Students Association and part of MCGY. So I'm just curious. So in this age of AI, so a lot of you panelists have mentioned about like the widening digital gap and how it affects the indigenous people. So it's quite important to integrate like CDWD and indigenous youth into STEM and medical education to bridge this gap. And these like medical education and the STEM education are predominantly from the like Western framework. And are there any best practices that can also incorporate like indigenous knowledge, indigenous language, as you have mentioned, which have been losing, and balancing this out with like the Western kind of knowledge and culture to further empower these youth and while preserving their culture too? Yeah, so how to like are there any best practices to like balance the STEM and medical education from the West and also like the indigenous part of education to ensure that these cultures are being preserved in education system? Maybe Ms. Nagma or other panelists.
Thank you. So the language part, I come from the Newar community, and Newar is considered one of the oldest languages in our country, but yet it's not been used in education system. It's mostly just Nepali that we use. So a lot of youngsters, they don't even understand, or they were not even taught how to speak in Newari language. So that's happening in ground. And your question on AI and technology, the generative AI that most of us know, ChatGPT, it understands Newar language, fortunately, and it can also give answers in Newari, but then it cannot write the Newari script. It will still be in English, but Newari language. So there is some sort of inclusion in that, which is great. But I think it also needs to be in the actual script like the Devanagari that we use in Nepal and India. So it's called Nepal Bhasa, the Newari language. So I hope those sort of inclusion also happens in the AI and the generative AI developments that's happening at the moment. And for the next question, I can pass it on to any other panelist.
For the language part, also Egypt is doing the same with the Coptic language. They're trying as much as they can to preserve the language because it's the ancient language of Egypt. And I believe in many countries in the North African region as well, they're doing that with their ancient languages. On the medical education to save tradition, is that your question? Did I get that question right? I'm not sure what could be done on medical education to save tradition, because I don't really see the connection between medical education and saving the tradition. You know, medical is medical, even if it's traditional medicine. If it's evidence-based, it's there, you know. So I don't really see the correlation, but we can have this conversation after the session.
Maybe. Okay, you and then the nation. Then we'll try to come back. Okay, we'll have 1 minute.
All protocols duly observed. My name is Raymond Ejikemo, and I'm from Nigeria. And I represent MGCY, and I'm a PhD candidate at Georgia State University, Atlanta, Georgia. The question I wanted to ask, somebody asked it online, not like fully, but that's on disability. But on this regard, I'm not gonna do it as a question because I see that like the panelists kind of like chimed in to that, but I'm gonna do this as a contribution, then as a question as well. So it's about allowing people. Yeah, it's about allowing people to participate, right? So there should be concrete measures and mechanisms by the government and international bodies to ensure that these communities, especially those from the marginalized circumstances, they're not just beneficiaries, but they are equal partners. And, you know, they take part in the monitoring and evaluation of these programs and policies. You know, so after HLPF, what next? How accountable with this? How do we track their genuine participation in these programs, right? So I just want to throw this. How do you think, because you gave like solutions, how these people will participate and programs being put in place, you know, Francisca. So how will, you know, accountability for their genuine participation and impact be tracked beyond this forum? That's my question. Yeah, I want Francisca to answer that. You mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's also a really good question. And the thing about these processes, right, is that sometimes there is an evaluative mechanism. That means there is follow-up and there is a way to evaluate how successful, or there are certain objectives or indicators that have been met. Unfortunately, the Global Forum on Migration and Development is not such type of process. The way that it is designed is that it usually follows within the modalities Chatham House rules, and also it is more informal, but that's what allows for multi-stakeholder engagement. So I think, to respond to your question, I think the it's less of a question of how do we evaluate these mechanisms or ensure the follow-up, but how do we strike the balance between creating these informal spaces at the highest level so that it truly is a whole of society approach, so that it truly is inclusive and multi-stakeholder, bringing together the voices of civil society, but also member state and observers and international organizations, and at the same time have the documents, the platforms, the partnerships, and kind of have a place for that and see that all come together. Within this specific forum, I can say that we have the platform for partnerships, which is a global repository of knowledge, also in line with certain SDG indicators. And so that is the closest thing to an evaluative mechanism that it has. But I do understand the frustration in your question, seeing that we're all talk and there's no follow-up. And I think that we should keep asking these types of questions in these types of spaces to see how we might move forward. So I know that it's not a full answer, but it's the best that I can give you.
Thank you. Thank you, Francisca. We had, yeah. And then finally, Dinesh. Yeah, thank you. You just have 1 minute to like either ask or respond or give an input. And then we have 1 minute from the panelists as well. Thank you.
I'm Charlene Bornea from the Philippines, representing the Women's Federation for World Peace International. My question is, many of us migrate not for luxury, but for survival. We carry the emotional weight of the immigration process. We end up in systems that make us feel like modern-day indentured workers. How do we build solutions that see us as full people, not just temporary labor? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maimouna Ba, and I come from Burkina Faso. I'm the founder of the Foundation Mama Sahelian. I'm from a pastoralist indigenous community in West Africa. And if you follow the situation, particularly the political situation in West Africa, you will notice that there is a deep crisis in the Sahel region. And I want to share with all of you that this crisis is affecting more the pastoralist people than anybody else. They are the first victims, those indigenous people. And unfortunately, they are so forgotten. Some families are in the bushes without any opportunities or possibilities of going out, and they are just being killed by the terrorists and by the states sometimes, unfortunately. We are organizing as a network that is named West Africa Indigenous Network to support those families to go out of Burkina Faso, to go out of the Sahel zone where they are taken as hostages. So I want to know, how can the youth Indigenous Global Caucus can support us? What can you do? How can we address this challenge together? We really feel like we are the most forgotten populations in the world. Nowhere people talk about the genocides, the things that states are doing to indigenous pastoralist people in this part of the world. The lives of our women and our children matters too, right? How can we act together? How can you support us? This is my question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Dinesh, and I'm in the Inclusivity Project. It's really encouraging to see such cross-border solidarity on the issue of discrimination based on work and descent, and how other groups where this sort of issue addresses the intersectionality. It's also very encouraging to see, Naveen, as you said, many communities have come together. We have the Roma community, the Haratin community, Dalits in Asia, all of these groups coming together to build a coalition and to visibilize this issue. Some of us who may have been in conference room 4 yesterday, really encouraged by the remarks made by Ambassador Ray as well on the importance of addressing communities discriminated on work and descent and addressing this form of discrimination. And finally, Ambassador, we're really encouraged by the remarks you have made in your opening statement on the importance of addressing this issue. So there seems to be quite a bit of momentum built up in this aspect. And I'm just wondering, Ambassador, if you could highlight what do you think member states can do to sort of address this issue more strongly within the United Nations human rights system and within the UN system more broadly. Thank you.
Yeah, very quickly. I think something that me and a couple of colleagues were discussing the other day is that in this HLPF, migration doesn't seem to have a very specific place. We hear it, but it's more of very much pushed to the sidelines, which is kind of surprising since we're talking about SDG 8 on decent work and also on partnerships for the goals. So I think pushing the question of migration and also linking HLPF to other global processes, notably the GCM, IMRF is coming up in February 2026, the International Migration Review Forum, and having that kind of build momentum into pushing for having the GCM, which is the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Dignified Migration. And of course, I also think that bringing the same voices, having the multi-stakeholder approach is basically a whole of society approach. So having migrants with lived experience of themselves, trade unions and coalitions, as well as labor unions present in these spaces could really help push for that. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So I think, I'm not sure whether you took any panelist name to respond to that question, did you? Because the person who's supposed to respond is not present, so I will try to respond on her behalf. I think it's also about what very specifically Francisca has mentioned, that you have to build coalition on the grassroots, which is the most important thing, because the kind of instances which you are specifically mentioning is the violence which the community, especially the indigenous community, has been facing. It's almost similar if we talk about the CDWD as well. And that is where there is an intersection as well as similarities coming up very strongly in terms of violence. And these violence are not something which is because of the communities always. Sometimes it's also a state-sponsored violence.
Children, women, everything. And sometimes you see jihadists in the same, sometimes you see white men doing this. So what are we supposed to be on those people?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Sure, sure. So I'll just quickly finish my part, maybe, but strongly agree. So I was not talking about the similarities in terms of discrimination which they face, but I was also talking about the violence which the communities have been facing in the same manner, like state-sponsored violence which they have been facing. So I totally agree, because the fight is it's very different, no doubt, but the issues and challenges which they sometimes face might be similar, and that's where we're trying to build up the whole solidarity aspect. So I mean, I'm sure Judy would have been the best person who could have. Yeah? You want to respond to that? Okay, just give me a second. Yeah. 1 minute. Yes.
Yeah, I'm from Nigeria, which is West Africa. So let me get you right. You're talking about the people moving about with their livestock and they are being attacked. Good. So I'm from Eastern Nigeria, and in Nigeria we have like the same thing you are talking about. I don't know if it's like different in Burkina Faso, but where I am from in Southern Nigeria, we have what we call Fulani and the community clash, where the herders go into farmlands and the cows, eat the crops and everything, and they, clash with communities. Then the government will say, okay, there is a ranch where you can raise your livestock, because your livestock cannot survive on another person's livelihood. And when this type of thing happens, it becomes bloody, because some of them know that they will clash with communities. So most go armed and, or even go from house to house, like that's a place, if you browse Benue killing, the herders moved to a community and murdered 200 people in that community who resisted the destruction they had in their farms. So in this type of situation, it's how do the herders interact with the people or the farmlands, the owner of the farmlands that they go into. You understand? So the state actors don't just chase these people away from, but they are against the herders making their cows to feed on the crops of the local people, right? So our immediate past president, who just passed a few days ago, suggested a cattle ranch in all the states in Nigeria, which people resisted. So instead, the northern part of the country have
Thank you so much. I think in solidarity with our sister, we need to understand her first. That's the first thing she's seeking for. Then we are going to give her orientation where she's going to meet maybe the group that can bring the solution to it if we can't. We have this in the northern part of Cameroon. I'm from Cameroon, where the Fulanese or the indigenous communities are caught up between security forces and armed forces. They are the victims from all the two sides. The government, the security cannot protect them. They are being killed by security forces, by armed forces, and they are also being killed by non-armed forces, like the group, the jihadis, and the other groups she's saying. So they don't have the space, and they don't live in town. They live in the bush, and the bush is their home. And they can't even live in that bush because they are being attacked by non-armed forces, and they are being attacked by soldiers raping their children, killing the women. That's what she's saying right now. Maybe our group cannot have a solution, but you are going to rethink or see within the major group and other stakeholders, the group where we can actually connect her for her solution. But first, I think she was needing someone to understand what she's saying. Is that what you're saying? Thank you.
Thank you, Queen. Thank you. We'll just quickly end, but thank you. And we just have the same words. Like we can try to kind of show solidarity in every possible manner, support, but to also understand the issue itself, we have to be you at the same stage. So, but thanks for bringing it up. And we just have the last response, and then we'll have to end the session.
Just very quickly, thank you very much for your question. Just to let you know that I'm very new to this subject matter of CDWD, but very quickly, and I think you understand my perspective, I think it's to continue with this multi-stakeholder dialogue and bring it up to the attention of the member states. Just to mention the power of the reach that was made by Naveen and maybe two or three others. Yesterday we met. That was my first time to hear this subject matter, even though I've been here for about 7 years. But we were a small mission. We couldn't cover everything. But it's a matter of people like Naveen reaching out to member states so that we can involve and engage in maybe a third committee in the dialogue of that in relevant committees and bring up to the attention of member states. Group of Friends is also another platform where we can propagate and increase the awareness of member states. So member states have to be part of a consultation with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think your presence itself has kind of strengthened the whole process, and your words to support to Group of Friends is quite powerful. So we should kind of end it because we also have interpretation going on, and we also would like to thank Carla, Pranjali, and the whole team, and everybody who's present online, because it's in India and Asia, it's very late. But before we conclude, we would like to have a quick, good picture together, if we can have it, and then we're all by ourselves. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, could I just quickly share? I'm with the Global Indigenous Youth Council.
Oh, okay. Great. So maybe you can have a conversation with them later if possible.
I'm the North American focal point, and I would be happy to connect people with the GIYC.
Will be great.
I'm Sam.
Hi, Sam. Can we have the picture together? Yeah. Also, all the panelists, someone give me 1 minute, maybe just. Okay, sorry.